Hello, everyone. It's Dev to Dev, the podcast about everyday video game developers and why they do what they do every day. And we're back with another episode. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm excited about every episode. I'm excited about this episode with Aram Granger, someone who I have worked with before, only very briefly, unfortunately, but is one of my favorite people, top dude, who has, again, had a fascinating career, both inside and outside of video games, which we explore. Gives us a great breakdown of where he worked and the different experiences of working inside video games and outside video games. Really good convo. Again, really gets to the heart of the episode. So I really appreciate Aram taking the time. It was great to spend some time with him again, having not seen him for a while. I hope you all enjoy the conversation. As always, Dev to Dev is available on Patreon. All of Season 1 and the video versions of Season 2 are available to subscribers. You can also check out the posts that I put up on Instagram, LinkedIn, various places, Blue Sky, clips to try and give you a flavour of some of the stuff we talked about. Please like and share those as much as you can. It really helps. Dev to Dev is all about the human side of making video games. It's less about what you've worked on and more about how it was for you to work on and in the industry. So I appreciate everyone that takes the time. I appreciate those people that have recently reached out after hearing me on the Retro Hour, which I did an episode of, talking about my career in video games. You can also hear me on the DLC Patreon doing Feeling This with Christian Spicer, where we talk about the mechanical feel and why games feel the way they feel, which is really one of my bread and butters, is making games feel great. So yeah, check those out if you have time. DLC is my favourite podcast. I love listening to Jeff and Christian and Lana and everyone. So please check that out. But yeah, without further ado, let's sit back and listen in to another episode of Dev to Dev with Aram Granger. Yeah, let's kick it off. Yeah, if you just want to say who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. Well, my name is Aram Granger, and I'm a visual effects artist. I make explosions for video games. That's what I tell everybody. That's the shorthand for what I do. Of course, visual effects involves a lot more than explosions. It involves fire and smoke and fog and sparks and water and cool magic effects and anything that's not hard surface, basically. Anything that's not a vehicle, a character, or landscape is either audio or visual effects from the art standpoint. So.
Love that. And a lot of what you do, Aram, I think brings substance to a lot of what I like to do, right? Which is make games feel good, right? VFX are a huge part of that. So I'm excited to get into that and, you know, what your process is and how that goes for you. But, you know,
I think that as a visual effects artist, I actually put the sauce on your substance. I mean, if you kind of do the main dish, right? You do the design, and I'm kind of service oriented in bringing your vision to life. So if you as a designer make up something out of thin air, I'm amazed by that, and I want to make it just that much, a little bit better. I just want to, put the sprinkling on it, put the sauce on it, and so that's what I consider VFX to do.
Love that. I agree. That's a great way of framing it. And yeah, I mean, we have worked together before, not for a while, unfortunately, but we have worked together for a while. And so, yeah, like I say, I'm excited to kind of dig into history, but I always kick this off with my favorite first question. What first inspired you about video games?
That is I didn't originally start out I didn't set out to be a visual effects artist at all, much less one in video games. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and then I did about 19 years actually, and then before that, I spent 10 years doing visual effects in Hollywood for feature films, for television commercials, for TV episodic TV. I didn't know you could do that as a job. I had always played video games when I was a kid. I had friends. I wasn't rich enough to have my own game system, unfortunately, my own console system, but I had a lot of friends who had Intellivisions. A buddy of mine let me borrow his Vectrex for a little bit, which was an old like CRT-based, vector-based game system that had color gels you could put on the top of it. So it was very rudimentary, all these cartridge-based game systems that I would go over to friends' houses and play. And I remember a game called Snafu on the Intellivision that I really loved a lot, which is basically Snake, a Snake game. Then my friend group kind of got into computers, and they all bought Atari 800s, and then they bought Commodore 64s. And I actually got my first computer, was a Commodore 64 from a friend of mine. He sold it to me for $150, and we all had all had our little floppy disk drives that we would just copy games to each other back and forth. And pretty soon I had 150 games, double-sided. You have to notch the other side of a floppy disk to get it to be double-sided so you could fit more games on there. And so I have a hard time really picking a single game because there were so many. Some of them stick out. I really enjoyed the summer games, the EA summer games. This would have been 1984, I think, which made sense. The LA Olympics were in 1984, and EA put out a summer games and a winter games. I really enjoyed those. And then just so many Commodore 64 games. Beachhead and Karateka was a really good one, kind of a fighting karate-based game. But since I hadn't bought it, I had a crack of it. It was super buggy, and so I was really interested in the looks of it, but never the gameplay. But I just enjoyed playing games. At the same time, my parents bought me a Koala Pad, which was sort of a Wacom tablet for the Commodore 64, and so I was drawing pictures on a computer when I was 11, 12. So this would have been in the early 80s. 83, 84, something like that. I didn't know you could make a career out of it. So my high school guidance counselor didn't know you could make a career out of it. So this wasn't on my radar. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go make this game now. I actually tried to program games that were in the back of magazines. These giant text files that would come up and the headline would be, you can make your own game and type this in and you'll be playing in no time. And so sure enough, I'm sitting there banging away on this keyboard, and invariably I would miss a space or forget a colon or some horrible thing like that. And I'd finish typing it all up and it wouldn't work. And I'd just be so frustrated. And so I put that down real quick. I really liked the instant gratification of the art and really liked making pretty pictures. Always like fog and smoke and fire. Who doesn't like that? But I kind of put it down in favor of sports and music. I actually graduated college with a music degree. I have a music degree in theory and composition. However, during that time, I was dating a girl this was in San Diego. I was dating a girl who was a manicurist also. She was going to school with me and being a manicurist. I later married her. We've been married for almost 30 years now. So that has a happy ending. But she had, as a client, the CFO of this little studio and gaming company. And they did commercials in San Diego. And they needed interns, and in return for my internship, they taught me the software that they were using, which at the time was Lightwave. And so I learned Lightwave, and I learned it really quickly. You know, my girlfriend at the time said, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend's been making art with computers. He's pretty good with computers. Yeah, hire him. He'll work for free." And sure enough, I did. I worked for free, and answered the phones and took out the trash and returned mail. Did mailings and. They were also a school as well as a studio. And so they were doing cinematics for PlayStation. They were doing kind of subcontracting with 989 Studios at the time down in San Diego. And they were doing cinematics for PlayStation, doing local commercials. They did the cinematics for Jetmoto and for Twisted Metal. I ended up building a bunch of phonemes for them just because I could model, and I discovered I liked animation. I could animate. There wasn't any rigging. We didn't have bones at that point. We were just moving points around, literally pushing points and polygons. And then they invented a particle system. And this was before Maya came out, before Houdini came out. So Lightwave had a pretty cool particle system and a renderer called Steamer that we used. And Lightwave had a built-in renderer that was pretty cool at the time. That had the best kind of built-in renderer of all the 3D softwares that were out there. 3D Studio Max was making big inroads into gaming at that time, but I was more focused on television. So after my internship was over, this place hired me. I worked with them for about 3 weeks and then heard that a place up in Valencia called Foundation Imaging was hiring. So I was still in San Diego at the time. I quickly cut a reel to Foundation Imaging, a demo reel of the stuff that I'd worked on, and then sent it up there. And they were working on a kids' TV show called Roughnecks, the Starship Troopers Chronicles. And that was my first kind of foray into episodic television and flying spaceships around, doing animation. It was really, at the time, we were all wearing all hats. So we had dedicated texture artists, dedicated riggers, dedicated modelers. But I was an animator, and we did a little bit of compositing. And I was a lighter as well. So I did lighting, animation, compositing. And from there, Foundation Imaging was also really known for Babylon 5. Doing the television effects for Babylon 5, and then Star Trek Voyager, and they were really the best game in town for television effects for a long time. And I was really, really almost lucky, but I was really happy to be working with them. During that time, I kind of got re-exposed to video games. So we would work all day and then just blow off steam at the end. It would be upstairs versus downstairs, and we'd all be playing Quake 3 Arena. And we discovered some really, really fun times in multiplayer. And then my buddy found a new game called Battlefield 1942 that was World War II Battlefield. It was networked. You could play it. You could set up a local network, fire up a server. And sure enough, after working all day, we would quit around 7 and be like, all right, it's time. And upstairs versus downstairs. And we'd be hooting and hollering and having a great time playing Battlefield 1942. Again, I'd never really thought about working in video games at that time. I had a pretty good start on a career in television and film effects. And I worked in TV and film from 98 to about 2008. And then 2008, I left the place that I was working at. We had a place called Zoic Studios. We had worked on Firefly. We had worked on Battlestar Galactica. We had worked on some really cool shows. And I wanted a little bit more. I wanted to start my own company. And so I did that with a buddy of mine. We were ideally supposed to be contracting with the Dial, the Digital Imaging and Animation Lab at JPL. He was working at JPL at the time, doing spaceship flybys. I thought, hey, we've flown spaceships around for years. We can do this. And so we did. We tried contracting with JPL. We got a couple little contracts, but it wasn't really enough to keep us afloat. At the time, I had a young family too. So that was in 2008. And then in 2008, of course, the whole market kind of crashed. However, one market really didn't crash, and that was video games. And so a buddy of mine was the art director on Medal of Honor at EALA at the time. And I heard that they were hiring a visual effects artist, and I thought, I can do visual effects. And so I called him up and asked him if he thought I'd be a good fit for the job. And he said, yeah, absolutely. Come on down and interview. And so I went down and interviewed with Chris Tamburino and another guy named Raj Joshi. And they hired me for Command and Conquer. And I worked on Command and Conquer at EALA for a while. And that kind of started my game career. So it was really circuitous. I'm not sure if I would recommend that route to anybody. I'm not even sure that route exists anymore, because a lot of it I learned on the job. A lot of it I was very self-taught, just because there weren't any schools to teach that kind of stuff. So I definitely stood on the shoulders of giants and the people who kind of invented it underneath me, and then I helped bring those things to fruition, and really ended up in the right place at the right time. It was pretty fantastic. And I spent about 17 years at EA Studios, 18 years maybe at EA Studios. So EALA, and then Victory Games, and then became Dice LA. So that was all in the same building. And then I worked for Respawn for 6 years, and up until about a year ago. And now I'm at Insomniac. So yeah, that's my career in a nutshell.
That's a whistle-stop tour of a heck of a career so far.
Any questions?
Tons. And I think your circuitous journey, as you coined it, I think is one of the things that makes this conversation super interesting to me, because a lot of the people I spoke to have been very video game focused, like myself. But as we were sort of saying in the initial conversation, there are other industries out there that overlap, that are very different, they're very similar. So I'm definitely interested to dig into that part of it. Well, before I do, did you do visual effects on Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica?
Not Babylon 5, yes, Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, well, both of those are my two favorite sci-fi shows of all time. So even being in the same building as Babylon 5 is awesome. And I guess that was all Lightwave. That was all the Amiga-based.
It was.
Rendering, that very early.
Yeah, I was on PC by then. Lightwave kind of started on the Amiga famously, and then had moved to PC by the time I got there. The Amiga had gone the way of the Dodo, and PC was where it was at. So yeah, it was amazing that you could do feature style effects with desktop computers. They weren't $20,000 SGI stations or $50,000 SGI stations. They were off the shelf PCs, which was the big draw. I think we could charge less. At the same time, the profit margins were very slim. I mean, 2 and 3% profit margins, which is super slim in that industry. And I saw that it was kind of a race to the bottom, and that's kind of why I wanted out of that industry. I saw that everybody was kind of starting to sell the same sort of hot dog, and if you're all selling hot dogs, then there's no reason for anybody to go buy a more expensive hot dog. You're just going to buy the very cheapest one. And so that was that industry at the time, and I thought, maybe I better get out. And so I tried to get out and tried to start my own thing, working for the government, doing stuff for JPL. And that didn't work out. And like I said, it was really circuitousness and just being at the right place at the right time, and luck and grace of God and whatever, however you want to phrase it. I was really, really there.
I think I've seen that come up a lot in these conversations, Aram, is yes, there's a luck piece to it, but I think there is a preparation part to it as well, right? Like, you were skilled enough, you were confident enough in your skills, you were prepared, not overconfident, not the finished article, but you were the right person at the right place at the right time. And I think that's a big difference to just like, hey, I showed up and somebody gave me a wicked job, right? Like, it was a big part of that is what you'd learned, who you were at that point.
And I think my attitude throughout the whole thing has been, oh, that looks amazing, let's try it. Why not give it a shot? What am I going to lose? This looks great, I'll give it a shot.
Yes, I completely empathize with that too. Yeah, I think that there is an element of that, growing up in the industry at a time where, like you said, there were no rules, right? There was no one teaching it. It was just like, there's a problem, go solve it. It does sort of build that, like, well, I want to learn that problem. Like, I don't know any of this and I'm just learning as I go. So you never sort of lose that passion to just keep learning more and expanding that knowledge base.
And what can go wrong if I try this? What's the worst that can happen?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it actually ends up giving you a lot of freedom. If you have the worst case scenario in your mind and then you go do it anyway, it gives you a lot of freedom.
Definitely. Well, just walking it back a little bit, you mentioned San Diego. So you grew up in San Diego. Did you have any kind of siblings that were gamers as well, or any family members that were gamers, or was it really
No, I'm the oldest of three. My brother was into gaming just kind of because I was a little bit, but not as much as I was. And my sister is between us, and she wasn't super into gaming really. I grew up actually in Sierra Madre, California, which is right next to Pasadena. I ended up going to college in San Diego because my mom was the only one of my grandma's 4 kids that moved away. So I had family there. I had known I spent summers in San Diego growing up. But yeah, I grew up right around Pasadena. I went to school in Pasadena. So I'm from Southern California, born and raised. I think the farthest I've lived from my school was San Diego, or from my home, was San Diego. So yeah.
Got it. So West Coast all day.
West Coast all day long. Yeah. No, I just had a bunch of close friends who I spent a lot of time with that got me into gaming kind of originally. And then, yeah, I've always been kind of jealous of people who A, knew what they wanted to do, and B, had been gaming all their lives, just because I put it down. And so there's actually a big kind of blind spot for me in terms of consoles, because I've missed the rise of consoles completely. I was developing a little bit for the original PlayStation for PS1, doing some of those cinematics, but we didn't do any play testing. So I'm still much more comfortable with keyboard and mouse than I am on console, even though I'm developing primarily for console right now. Yeah. So no, I was just going to say, so I'm really jealous of you, for instance, who have had that, like, this amazing long history of game development, and kind of, it seems like you have known what you wanted to do, and I just did not. I had no idea out of high school what I wanted to do.
It's funny you should say that, because I didn't know, similar to you, right? I didn't know I could do this for real. And my story is that I thought the closest I could ever get to video games was being a journalist. So that was actually my plan, was I was going to be a video game journalist.
Oh, interesting. So did you study journalism at all in school?
No. I enjoyed English, and I studied English, but I never went to college. I just wrote my own fanzine in my year out between finishing high school and deciding whether I was going to go to uni. And it just, I got very lucky, and it worked out. And again, I think to a certain extent, there was preparation there was passion, there was desire, but timing was everything. But yeah, so you mentioned kind of a lot of friends that, loaned you machines. What was it about video games that really hooked you?
Man, that's a great question. I find it really difficult to put down once I start. I just love the interactiveness. I love you do something and then that matters in the world. I love an attaboy. I think just in general, just outside of video games, but including video games, I love an attaboy. If somebody pats me on the back and tells me, "Hey, man, that is a great job," then that really, really floats my boat. That really makes me happy. And so you get that kind of automatically with video games if they're done correctly. I don't want to say correctly, because there's a whole genre of video games now that will punish you. So I'm frustrated easily by puzzles. I don't like feeling tricked by developers. And I think that's one of the things that I like about Battlefield is I push, for instance, I push the button and the thing happens. And I'm really, really like the thing. Another game I really like is Age of Empires. I spend a lot of time playing RTS games like Diablo, like the original Warcraft, like Age of Empires. But I'm not a good competitive player in those games, because I like to sit and watch the animations and watch the destruction and watch the effects. And so that's really what ropes me into video games.
Cool. Interesting. Right. So a combination of the interactivity, and you mentioned the kind of like the attaboy, the reward, that's something that you as a human, you, Aram, you love regardless of video games. It's just video games are really good at that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll pay money for that.
Right. And funny that you're now in the field that, as we said at the start of this episode, that is pivotal in making sure in many ways that those rewards feel, the responsiveness is there, and you get that feedback. Yeah,
absolutely. That's one of my big joys, is giving that to others.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. So the interactivity, were there any particular game genres or game styles that really pulled you in, or were you just like, I just love video games, they're all fun?
Yeah. FPSs originally was kind of what pulled me in. And Quake 3 Arena was just a huge, I still remember The Longest Yard. That was such a fun map, and just the immediate reaction, everybody against everybody else, and the awesome feeling of, even though you're against somebody, the feeling of camaraderie. I just remember afterwards we all used to all collect outside the studio, and we'd all be shaking and sweating. It'd be midnight, because we had just worked all day. It's midnight, and we are just completely amped up and just having a great time together. First-person shooters were probably the one that sticks out the most in terms of giving me that immediate feedback, and not just increasing my love of video games, but increasing my camaraderie with my fellow man, my fellow developers. we've been in the trenches all day long. We've been fighting software all day long, and then we get to come together and blow off steam, and it's just really, really fun. I'd imagine it's the same with sports. In fact, I know it's the same with sports. If you're on a football team or a baseball team, the feeling of winning together, of losing together, of just being together, it really is a huge deal for me. And in terms of modern games, I think I keep coming back to Battlefield, but when Battlefield nails its squad gameplay, and when you get a good squad up and you're capping objectives and you're going from flag to flag, and there's nothing like it. Yeah, that's what really attracts me to video games.
Interesting, because that almost feels like maybe that's because you said you sort of put video games down for a while and then you came back to them. It almost feels like maybe that's a layer that helped you rediscover them, because although that camaraderie would have existed, back in the days on the Commodore 64, right? If you were playing, Winter Olympics or something with some friends, right? There was a little bit of competitive, friendly competition and stuff there, but on that level of kind of, LAN, like you said, or online gaming, right? That's kind of pushed that level of competition, but also, camaraderie to another level. Yeah. What if that sort of was what rehooked you again, of like, oh man, I forgot how much I love video games because, they're like this now.
That's a fair take. Yeah. I would say that. And again, I would not have thought of that when I was doing it. Nor would I have thought of any purposeful design behind that. I mean, I'm sure Lars Gustafsson did when he was thinking about this stuff, but I was just like, hey man, this is fun. I wasn't smart enough to figure out, well, why is it fun? Yeah, no, that's way above my pay grade, my friend. That's yours.
But it set you back on the path though, right? Like that, even if it was in the back of your head, right? Games pulls you back in. I would also argue that there's not many moments that feel more satisfying than landing a railgun shot in Quake 3 in terms of that, like, responsiveness and feedback and like satisfaction, right? I'm a big Quake 2 fan, but same principle, right? Yeah, the railgun is probably one of the best examples of push button thing happens.
100%. Yeah, and even the rocket with the rocket launcher with the good splash damage, Yeah, if you're not skilled enough to use a railgun.
Yes, or a perfect pineapple on somebody's head as well. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways. Yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, so in that period, you mentioned kind of music and sports being a big thing in college. In that period where video games sort of took a back seat, was that because I think you kind of mentioned this, but I want to confirm, was that because the focus on animation and the sort of the art side that you'd really pulled you in the companies you were working on, that was where you were putting your passion, that was where your focus was how do I do this better, absorbing. I'm sure you were watching a lot of early 3D animations and art as it was coming out, right? Was that just the distraction that kept you away from video games, or was there some other reason why they just weren't in your life at that point?
No, it was before that. Yeah, it was merely a matter of time. I mean, it was before that though. It was with sports in high school, and actually, I was doing music early on too as a kid. I was in the Pasadena Boys Choir for 3 years or so, touring all over the place, and so that took a bunch of time as well. We didn't have handheld consoles. Actually, we we did. Actually, some of the rich kids had these little LED sort of football games where it was just lights, where you just move the lights around, and an LCD racing game. I don't remember the names of those at all. So when you're out touring, you don't have, access to those things if they're not available. There was no Game Boy. So yeah, it was a matter of availability, and I got involved in sports during high school, and so that really cut down on my video gaming. That actually kind of changed my friend group as well. So immediately before that, I had kind of the quiet nerds as friends, and then I started playing football and running track, and we had I had more the loud jocks as my friends, and so that my friend circle kind of changed. Getting into getting into college, I started getting into more video games when, again, my friend group changed. You go through these areas of your life where your friend group just entirely changes. And for me, it's probably a character flaw on my end. I don't really end up keeping in touch with my old friends. I have a couple that I talk to once in a while, but not with any regularity. But the kind of the video game aspect of it kind of came in just to blow off steam. I had bought a computer in college. It was a Power PC. It was a Macintosh Power PC, but Blizzard released Warcraft for it, and so I played Warcraft a lot on that. Again, not with any thought of, hey, well, I can do this, or let's look at this for reference. None of that. I was just playing games, having fun. And that was when I first figured out that, I really like RTS games also. And so I had a really fun time playing that. And so that kind of started the ball rolling on video games just as a concept for me as a career. Again, just because of my wife's interaction with this little game company in her manicure client. And again, just kind of all the puzzle pieces sort of just started fitting together. Again, I didn't have a plan. That's the thing. I've never had really, unfortunately, have never had a career plan. So I'm terrible at giving career advice. I'm saying I can say, here's what I did. Don't do that. But really, that really opened the door to me in my mind for video games. Was just they started getting just way better, and suddenly there was this massive generational shift that happened between kind of the original Wild West of PCs and Commodore 64s and Amigas and these weird consoles that started coming out, this Nintendo, this Sega, Genesis, all that stuff. It looks really cool, but my parents, they're not going to buy a purpose-driven video game console. It was just a time waster in their mind, I'm sure. But by the time I could afford my own PC, I was already doing other things with the PC. I bought it ostensibly for music programs. But boy, I sure ended up using it mostly for video games.
But that's interesting because it feels to me, and maybe this is a reach, right? But video games were kind of bumping along in the background, right? They were a big passion, and then you were distracted away. But also this, you mentioned like music programs. There's also this kind of like creative element, from the sort of early tablet, creating art on the C64 to buying a PC or a Mac for music creation. It feels like those two veins, which I would imagine are so relevant now, right? You are making video games in a very technical field, artistically technical field, that they've sort of bumped along in the background and then converged at the perfect time after the kind of the JPL thing didn't work out. So it feels like it's kind of bubbled along there in the background. It's just, to your point, you've never been like, oh, I should do that as a job. It's just they've just been kind of coalescing there. Yeah,
that's really accurate. I've really enjoyed them my whole life. I can't remember not liking video games, but now I just love what I do. It's like one of those things where you can't really imagine not doing something. I mean, I'm sure you have hobbies, and then your hobbies kind of bump around in the background until an opportunity comes up where it's like, oh wait, I really enjoy talking to people. This can maybe turn into something. And so that's really how this video game thing was for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's also interesting to me that it sounds like, and this, I might not be accurate here, but a lot of the 3D art stuff that you were doing was very video game adjacent, right? Like, you were doing obviously the 989 stuff and the Twisted Metal. Those obviously are directly video, but like, as a big Babylon 5 fan, there was a lot of overlap with video games, right? The big ship, the space, the fighters, right? All the Minbari, all the races. It felt very Wing Commander-y, if you like, to use a video game direct reference. And then obviously BSG and Firefly, right? How many video games have I worked on where we've referenced Firefly as like one of the reasons why we're making, or one of the tones of the game?
No way,
man. Like Firefly is like, in my opinion, amongst a certain age group, I'm sure, Firefly has been an inspiration. Even in games you would never imagine there's a one-to-one correlation, but like the vibe of Firefly and the style of Firefly was very, very, very revered.
Oh, that's interesting, Alex. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's super cool, though.
I mean, I was just doing a podcast with a video with another friend of a game called Primal that I worked on, and I distinctly remember the creative director on that project. That game is not sci-fi at all, but we reference Firefly, you know, just in terms of kind of the, you know, relating to the tone, the vibe, the character dynamics, the character development, right? You know, yeah, it's definitely come up a few times.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Joss Whedon definitely knows his way around a character. That's for sure. Knows his way around dialogue. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's funny to me that you were sort of building these skills in 3D art and, you know, other, you know, VFX and rigging and modeling, in a very video game adjacent field. And then, you know, obviously those stars aligned.
Yeah. I find in general that, video game technology, if you will, the tech behind, visual effects specifically, but also animation, also modeling, you know, just the sheer amount of polys you can throw at the screen. I find that it lags about 10 years or so behind film. So film and TV. Actually, TV lags about 5 years behind film. At least it did when I was doing it. That may have changed recently. Actually, I'm sure it has changed recently, actually. TV probably lags about 2 to 3 years behind film now, just in terms of complexity of assets that it can put on the screen. And by the same token, I think video games, there's overlap in that what film and TV was doing 10 years ago, video games are doing now. What film and TV is doing now, video games are going to be doing in 10 years. And that time, I think, is compressing. We're seeing sort of the advent right now of real-time fluids. We're seeing a lot of really cool techniques to just get better-looking stuff on screen quicker. And that's really what it's all about, is getting better-looking stuff on screen quicker. And that was one of the things that I was good at in television, was getting good-looking stuff on the screen quickly. We had to. You know, we had 5 weeks to turn around an episode of Firefly. You had to get it good. You had to get it on screen, and you had to get it quick. And so that was a really good way of sort of preparing me for what I'm working on now.
For sure. I mean, that correlates, you know, having worked with you, you know, only briefly, but having worked with you, Aram, that tracks, man. Like, as someone that could take an idea and get it on screen very quickly, like, that would definitely be one of the things I would credit you as being excellent at. So it kind of makes sense that, again, that, you know, that grounding you got in TV has sort of paid off in the, and that, I guess I would also, you mentioned technology a lot, right? You mentioned, you know, being inspired to, how many people had a tablet on a C64? How many people threw themselves into Lightwave and learned it right away? Right, technology, especially in the visual side of video games, is so complicated and evolving and dynamic. Right, it sounds like you have a real passion for that. Right, you have a real desire to like understand the technology and roll your sleeves up and get stuck in.
I really try to, and I really want to say that I understand the technology. Man, I really don't. I really, under the hood, I'm not a coder, and I figured that out quickly. I took a basic class in junior high, and you know, basic just isn't used anymore, and that's the extent of my programming knowledge. I know a little bit. I mean, the first sort of game experience I had with programming, I don't even want to call it programming, it was just throwing XML around, because the Sage engine that we did Command and Conquer in was an XML based text editor, text editor using engine. You'd slide bits of code around and make new ones, and that would be how you got assets into the game. And the tech is changing really quickly also. Just kind of under the hood. So there's, I really don't know a lick of HLSL. I couldn't tell you how to write a shader from scratch, really. I can use shaders. And in fact, this may be another character flaw. For a long time, I hesitated to call myself an artist. I would call myself a button pusher, and I stopped when it looked good. So that's what I did for a long time in television. I'd push these buttons and tweak these slides, and then I stopped when I was happy, when it looked good. And, thankfully, other people were happy too. Thankfully, my supervisors were happy enough that they agreed with me that it looked good. But yeah, keeping up with the tech is an ongoing daily struggle for me. I'm constantly learning. I'm head down in Houdini. Actually, my current assignment right now is to do a bunch of fire in Houdini. So I'm head down and elbows going, and it's fire, right? It's bread and butter. Everybody knows how to do fire, right? It's not art directed at all. Well, it turns out it is. Fire is one of the most art directed things ever, and every fire that you see in a movie is art directed to the nines, and the tech behind it, and just the simulation and the ability, and then the amount of buttons to push and dials to tweak is it can be overwhelming, but I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the challenge. I really, again, enjoy the feedback of doing something and then seeing the result.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, exactly. It tracks with the Attaboy. I guess it's a very humble way of looking at it, Aram, but I guess,
dude, I'm not smart enough to be anything but. There's so many people out there that are smart.
But that's how I always speak about myself as well, right? Like, I'm not a coder. I'm a Fisher-Price coder at best, right? Like, I don't consider myself super smart, but I feel like I've got good instincts. And I think what you captured really well is, you don't necessarily need to understand the nuts and bolts of how something works, but if you can use it well, if you understand how to get the best out of it, that can almost be more valuable, right? And it sounds like you're excellent at that, right? Like, yeah, you don't necessarily need to understand the underpinnings of how that shader is written, but if you can manipulate the buttons and dials on that shader, and you understand how those pieces work, and you've got good instincts to get good output, that can make you super effective.
And surround yourself by people who will check you. 100%. One of the things I learned at EA early on was that all feedback is a gift. There's no such thing as negative feedback. It's all a gift. Accept it gratefully, and there is such thing as wrong feedback, and even wrong feedback has an element of correctness and rightness, because you can get further along in a direction by knowing the negative, by knowing what not to do.
Totally agree.
Oh,
yeah,
that's been super helpful to me. Is the people that I'm surrounded with are super smart, thankfully, and they have great eyes, thankfully, and they make me a better person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I empathize with that completely, Aram. That's exactly how I feel now. I wasn't that person 15, 20 years ago. I think I've grown into that person. Yeah.
It takes a while.
Yeah, it does. I'm curious, is that who you are outside of your, VFX role? Like, are you that kind of person? Do you view life that way? Or is it just the way that you've found to do your job? You kind of pull on it when you're sitting in your chair working?
I hope so. You'd have to ask my kids and my wife if that's how it is in real life. But yeah, I hope so. I try to be. I try to live my life with humility and integrity and discipline, and I'm not good at it all the time. I'm not perfect at it all the time, but that's how I try to do it.
And do you think that's who you've always been, Aram, or do you think that your job?
No.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like the necessity of the kind of work we do that requires you to take criticism and throw ideas away, but also be the catalyst that gets people excited. That is part of that camaraderie that makes cool stuff happen. That has shaped me as a human. I think I'm a better human because I work in an environment like that.
Absolutely. And strong ideas held loosely is
a
really, really good way to live, I think. And especially in video games, because this is hard. Making video games is really, really difficult. And there's always a risk that it's not going to be good, and it's not going to be, even if it is good, it's not going to be received well. And you can put something out there. It's kind of like Dylan Thomas the poet had a great intro to one of his books, and it was summarized with, hey, here's here's my heart. I'm laying my heart out here for you. Do what you want with it. Throw it on the ground, stomp on it. It'll make it tough. And that's really how I approach video games and really how I try to approach life as well. But in terms of video games, here's my best. Do your worst. And I'm grateful for it, you know. And yeah, I was not always like that. And man, we had spending any time in Hollywood, you're surrounded by toxic arrogance, and then you become toxic arrogance. And I really saw that in my life. It really held true. And I think EA was my first professional experience where I was treated like a human being instead of an asset. And it really was kind of the start of having my eyes opened and really, oh wait, I can get my job done and get an attaboy at the same time. That's amazing. Because before it was like, yeah, you did your job. So what do you want, a cookie? And at EA, everybody was very, almost gentle and really, really kind and really grateful that I was there. And in turn, that made me grateful to be there. And so I really had a great time at EA. The team that I got hired onto was the one with the EA wives scandal. So yeah, the EA spouse. Yeah, exactly. So that was the team that I had hired onto, and they had been paid out settlements and all this stuff. And so by the time I got there, they were very, very, like I said, gentle and really happy for me to be there. And so I was super happy to be there too. After what I had been through in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question, is what was the biggest cultural shift you saw sort of moving from the VFX, art industry over into video games? It sounds like that's the biggest one, right? It's just the general approach to who you were. What about technically, right? Moving, obviously you'd spent a number of years building up this skill set in 3D and art and animation. Did that transfer? Were you sort of starting from scratch, or how was that experience?
No, it did transfer. And a lot of the stuff that I saw when I first hired on in video games for visual effects, I thought, oh, wow, I've done this. I was doing this 10 years ago. This is fractal noise on a polygon. What's the big deal? And that's all it was, except it was attached to a sprite and moving around, as a particle system. And then I thought, oh, well, I've had this 10 years of experience. Now, how can we make what we have here in this video game? How can we make it better with the existing technology that we have? And so, I had some ideas. At the time, sprites would cut into terrain, for instance, or other geometry, and they'd be very hard edged. And I was like, wait a minute, how can we get this to be a soft edge? And everybody was like, yeah, that's great, let's do it. And so, figured out how to do that. and it was a lot of fun. It felt kind of like being in on the ground floor again.
But with a head start, right?
Yeah, exactly. With kind of a roadmap of how to do it.
Yeah, that's cool. I've never heard that before. And it makes complete sense though that the real time video game performance was behind where you'd been at that point. Working on BSG at Zoic and doing your own thing, and then sort of coming into video games and being able to hit the ground running. Yeah,
and I say behind. In other ways, it's ahead just because of the way they manage. I mean, the way video games in general manage assets is so far ahead of TV and film. It's incredible to the point now where film and TV studios are taking video game engines and using them and using video game tricks to create final assets in television land and really good previs assets in film land. You think of The Mandalorian, you think of the volume that they're now doing. We actually had thought of that in 2007, I think. We worked on a pilot called NYPD 2069, and we used a big pre-rendered cyclorama that was being used as a screen to light characters. And but we didn't have Unreal. We had to do pre-rendered stuff out of Lightwave. But it's just interesting to see film and TV in turn borrowing from the advanced tech that video games are bringing out.
Yeah, especially in terms of real time, right? Because for the longest time, like you said, everything in film and TV was pre-rendered, was pre-baked, was prevised and then rendered out. But now, and video games were all real time. But now there's a big overlap there, isn't there? With a lot of the volume stuff they do in real time, and they can kind of frame and see the stuff happening, and then render it out. So
yeah, well, it's all about the almighty dollar too. I mean, it's cheaper and faster, and it still looks really good. So yeah, I'm super impressed by all that.
Yeah, and so the other thing that you did coming into video games was you sort of specialized in VFX.
I did, yeah. They needed a VFX artist. Yeah.
So how was that? It sounds like VFX was something you'd already done and you had experience in, but hadn't been your only passion. So how was that kind of shifting into something that was a bit more sort of laser focused?
So visual effects in Hollywood, and by Hollywood, I just mean film and TV. Visual effects means something different than it does in games. So in video games, visual effects is what I mentioned at the top of this. Visual effects in Hollywood is the whole package, so start to finish, not just explosions and fire. So I was a visual effects artist on paper, which meant that, and I had done everything in the pipeline from concepting and modeling through texturing, through rigging, through animation, through rendering and lighting, and then through compositing to delivery. And then I had also led teams of people that were doing that. So I kind of knew the pipeline from start to finish. But my title was visual effects artist. Actually, at first they didn't know what to call us. My title was digital artist for a while. Because I was an artist, but using digital stuff. And then visual effects artist. I was a visual effects animator for a while. One of my demo reels says a visual effects animator. And so I was officially a visual effects artist. Actually, nobody knew what a visual effects artist was my point. And then when I saw that EA was hiring a visual effects artist, I thought, hey, that's me. I can maybe do that. And when I talked to my buddy Lance Powell, who was the art director on Medal of Honor at the time, he was like, yeah, I think you'd be a great fit. Come on down. And so I I hesitate to admit this, but I didn't really understand what a visual effects artist was in games. And I found out when I got there. I showed my reel. My reel had explosions on it. It had lighting. It had spaceships flying around. I'd done a bunch of shots. I did a shot on Firefly where a guy got kicked down a mine shaft and got cut in half by this, welding machine. And I had built that whole thing. I had modeled it, but I also did all the particle simulations. I did all the visual effects. And so I guess stuff like that showed pretty well. And then, I was able to kind of speak intelligently about how I pulled that off and the processes that I used. And EA at the time did not expect anybody to come in knowing the Sage engine, right? It was completely unheard of. Whereas now there's a little bit of an expectation that you've at least used Unreal before and you kind of know what it is. So at the time there was an expectation that they would train me in what visual effects were. And thankfully I had a really good kind of fellow coworker, Casey Robinson, who had worked in the Sage engine before. He was working on Red Alert, on Command & Conquer Red Alert. And I was working on Command & Conquer 4 at the time. And man, he really took me under his wing, taught me a ton. And again, I picked it up pretty quickly. It made a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I didn't go in there with an idea of really everything that a visual effects artist does. And so I think there are still some pretty big holes in my knowledge for that reason. I'm not technically strong at all. I struggle a lot with shader math and vectors and things like that. There's a lot of things that I don't know. I'm working on it though, still growing.
Yeah. Interesting. And I guess you also got your start kind of on strategy games as well, which were a passion for you, which I'm sure was a good combination with your experience and that genre. Well, I mean, you've been a VFX artist. You were at Dice for EA. Dice for 12 years, and then you moved on. You finally moved on. In those 12 years, did you feel like you really grew into that VFX artist role and sort of really got to the point where you understood it really well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, there's still a bunch of holes in my knowledge. So whenever anybody asks me, "Do you understand this really well?" I go, "Well, I understand it, and I can fake the rest, but I really do know. I know a lot just because of my experience." And so, yeah, I mean that 12 years at EA and then the 6 at Respawn as well, which is also an EA studio. So the 18 years total at EA, yeah, really. I saw a lot of ups and I saw a lot of downs and I saw a lot of everything in between. And so that really did kind of grow me into the role for sure.
Yeah. And you also saw a lot of technology, right? You saw a lot of, quality technology platforms, performance metrics, like all those things changing over that's a long period of time. And the industry moves pretty fast.
They really did change. Yeah. Yeah, it really did. And it changed with the game, it seems. We did Medal of Honor. I worked on Medal of Honor 2010, which we did in Unreal 3. And that was the first time I had opened Unreal 3, any version of Unreal, actually. And so we cranked away. And once again, I leaned tremendously on the help of a lot of people, the tech artists. Mike Arsvald, for instance, was a huge help in kind of teaching me Unreal 3. But I knew the base assets and I knew kind of what looked good. So, and I picked up technology pretty quick. I'd had an animation background as well. So, I knew, Matinee, which was, Unreal's, kind of animation things, animation interface. So I didn't know Matinee, but it was familiar to me. The interface was familiar. So I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. And the same token when, Dice LA formed, and Dice opened up their Los Angeles studio, I picked up Frostbite pretty quickly, just because of that. So yeah, I guess I do pick up software pretty quickly. Just because I've had a bunch of experience in other software and it doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes.
Yeah, and I think, similar to when you joined EA, right, you go into each new software package with a head start, right? You might not know how this package does it, but you know what good looks like and you know what the end product is, you know what the pieces you're trying to push around. So I think that gives you a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big deal, really knowing what good looks like. And Peter Hoyles really drilled that into me, from Battlefield, as an art director on Battlefield 1. Really drilled what good looks like into me. And now I'm able to take that and drill it into other people, it's very nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're sort of running across some time. A couple of other questions I want to kind of dig into you. Has making video games and, the path that you've taken into it, has that changed the way you play video games?
It has a little bit. Yeah. I find it very difficult to play video games with a critical eye. I find it very difficult because I'm supposed to for my job. I'm supposed to be kind of aware of what's going on and look around, but I get very involved in the video game itself. I've been playing a lot of third-person video games now. Most recently at Respawn, I did the Jedi stuff. Worked on Jedi Survivor for a bit, and I guess the most recent game I've picked up was Black Myth Wukong, and it's really hard for me to get away from the ooh pretty phase. So I just stick around and I enjoy the ooh pretty phase and I enjoy the feedback. So in that sense, no, it hasn't changed. Every once in a while I'll come across something that makes me stop and go, how did they do that? And then I'll try to work that out. So in that sense, I have changed the way I play video games, definitely. And I have a much greater appreciation of what it takes to get these amazing games out the door. So that makes a big difference, I think. Just the time spent doing it.
Yes, yeah. I feel like so many people say the opposite, right? Is that once you start making games, you can't play a game without a critical eye, right? Because I feel like that, right? Like, but I also empathize. There are times where I will just sit down with a game and go, no, I'm not. I don't care. I just want to enjoy this thing, right, for what it is. I'm not trying to pick it apart.
Do you end up asking why they made that decision?
I think more often than not, yes. Like more often than not, I'm picking apart why a game plays or is structured or is designed the way it is. More often than not, there are exceptions. I'm playing Resident Evil 9 right now, and there's very little in that. I'm actually just trying to enjoy that for what it is, and I'm not really picking it apart. But I do tend to find it hard to not, at some point when I'm playing something, get critical about like, well, how does this function and why was this designed this way and what are they going for here?
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I when I'm looking at something and when I stop and slow down and go, oh, okay, this is they're pulling your eye here by means of this light over here. Usually, I'll stop and do that when I get frustrated. So if I'm playing Jedi Survivor, for instance, and I'm trying to figure out a puzzle and I'm just so angry, and I try to figure out, okay, Mr. Developer, Mrs. Developer, why are you? What do you want me to do here? I've done everything. What do you want me to do? So I really don't play it critically. I find it very difficult. To do that.
That's cool. No, I think that's the better way to be. I'm kind of jealous, Aram, because I think that is the better way because then you can still stay open, right? You can still still keep that sort of consumer, non-developer side of you healthy and fresh and at the fore, and not be a grizzled, grumpy old like, oh, that's stupid design. I wouldn't have designed it that way, that kind of stuff.
Well, I tend to get that way when, like I said, when I come to a stopping point, when I get frustrated and I just think, oh man, what? Okay, slow down. You don't have to get frustrated. This is my self-talk. You don't have to get frustrated. You can find out why they made this decision. It's okay. And then you can move on. And so then I'm moving on and playing the game and having fun.
Got it. Yeah. Does anyone in your family kind of relate to what you do? Do you, or are they kind of baffled by it? Like, how does your family relate?
Yeah. What do you mean relate?
I mean, do they, is anyone in your family, in a similar industry? Is anyone in your family curious about what you do? Or do they all kind of look on it as like, oh, that's cool. You make explosions. Yeah.
I think it's the latter. Yeah. I think they all look at it and go, oh, that's fun. Oh, how cool. Oh, neat. My two sons are big gamers. They love gaming. My oldest son is a software engineer, so maybe that's adjacent. My youngest son is he's going to business school. He's still in college, but he loves video games. All their friends are suitably impressed. I don't really know. I don't have a lot of visibility on their conversations with their friends. And I don't have anybody in my family that is going, yeah, I want to do that too, it's interesting to me. I mean, I think it's the coolest job in the world. How would you not want to do this? But to each their own, I guess.
Yeah. And do you ever find, kind of in the wild, right, when you're not amongst developers, you're not, you're kind of out with just, normies, do you find yourself kind of unable to connect because you're kind of in this unusual industry?
Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it's definitely not a normal thing. And there's still kind of an element of mystery and an element of what? I'm sorry, what? You mean like Madden? No, not quite like Madden, but yes, kind of similar to Madden. So yeah, there's an element of mystery and yeah, I always enjoy talking about what I'm doing just because I love doing it so much. And I really like the kind of reaction I get when somebody gets it. And I talked to somebody who actually, he was older than me, just a little bit ago. And his mind was blown by it. And he was an accountant his whole career. He's retired now, but he was an accountant for Costco the whole time. And, his mind was just blown by it and he thought it was so cool. So I do enjoy that. We had a great time talking because we both like sci-fi stuff. There's a lot of sci-fi fans out there and a lot of kind of sci-fi and fantasy tend to go together for some reason. And there's also video games I think that video games and comic books are more niche than television and movies, but sci-fi, the genre of sci-fi and the genre of fantasy really transcends all that and encompasses all that. So once in a while, I'll hit a sci-fi fan who's like, "Oh man, I loved Firefly," and then, "Oh yeah, I played Battlefield too," and "Oh man, that's amazing." So yeah, every once in a while, you'll run across some people who you can really have a fun conversation with. But most of the time, yeah, there's not a lot of identification, really. Like people don't know. I mean, and that's kind of how it is with just about every industry. I can't identify what it's like to be, a retail manager or whatever, somebody who works at a water plant or an electrician. I don't, I admire all those trades, and I don't really, have anything against them. I just can't identify with them. I love that you do finished carpentry. That's amazing. But we can't talk about it because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that I tend to find is like, I imagine this is true for people in the movies or musicians, is that in these sort of more creative fields, there's like a layer of specialty that if you're in a and this is a gross generalization, but if you're in a trade or in a more practical job, then there's almost more of a kind of social glue of like stuff outside of. I think that's the thing I find with video games is they're so consuming to me. Like you said, oh, you've got other hobbies. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, pretty much my only hobby is video games. Pretty much. There's a bit of Warhammer in there and a bit of skateboarding, but it's pretty much just video games.
Not a bad life, Alex. There are worse things.
Well, yeah, but I tend to find myself a little bit boxed in, like if I'm not in a group of people that are like, and not even just like, oh, I like Fortnite. Like, oh no, I like, Eco, or I like Dark Souls, or I like Bloodborne, or I like, Hearthstone, or, something a bit layered down from just the really big CODs and Fortnites and FIFAs that kind of burst through. I tend to be a little bit like, I've got, if you're not sort of in this creative nuanced field, I'm sort of a little bit, I don't really know what to talk about. Do you know what I mean? I struggle with that a little bit.
I totally understand. I do get that. Yeah, I do get that. And then, I mean, I tend to like sports. I tend to like cars. I tend to like music. And so that kind of helps me. I like cooking, I roast coffee on the side. I love that. And so, I love beer. I tend to like all these things that I like, tend to give me sort of a firm, however, they tend to give me a firm, like starting point where I can talk to a bunch of different people. I'm an expert at none of it though. I'm a master of none, as they say.
Oh, but I think it sounds like a versatile and capable life. I think
I try to be a master of visual effects. That's what I try to be.
I love it. So last question, and this might be an obvious one because you've sort of worked outside of video games and inside video games. But if you weren't in video games, what would you be doing?
Oh, that is not obvious at all. Man, I have no idea what I would be doing. I really do enjoy people, and I really do enjoy making people happy. And so I would figure some way to do that. I just mentioned roasting coffee. I really enjoy roasting coffee, and people tend to like it. And so I really enjoy doing that. If I wasn't doing video games, I might open a restaurant or open a cafe. But I mean, in an oblique way, that's kind of the reason I'm here, is because I had no idea what I wanted to do, and not like this was a last resort or last choice. But it was just something that it was a shiny object that caught my eye, and I thought, oh, that's amazing. I'm going to go do that. And so 20 years later, here I am, 30 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't stopped chasing that shiny thing. There's so much to chase.
Yep. 100%. That's a great way to put it, Alex.
Well, thanks, Aram. This is an awesome conversation. I love your journey, the circuitous way you've got to where you are. Sounds like you're where you should be, and I love that. And
so much fun, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Time's flown. But yeah, thank you. And yeah, catch you soon.
Really good talking with you, Alex. Thanks so much, man.